Hello, and welcome back to For the Penguins. I am your host, Mikara Mlikota. Thank you so much for joining. Last week, we talked with Becca about her job in project finance, specifically in the renewable energy sector. So if you're interested in this industry and want to find a job in that area, feel free to check it out. This week, we talked with Liliana Pond Miller about her job in government affairs. She specializes in advocating for the alternative protein industry. So if you're interested in knowing what different types of protein are out there and how she brings it up to different political parties, this is a great episode for you to listen to. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's get to it.
Hi, Lili. I'm so excited that you're here. We haven't seen each other in like 4, 5, 6 years. I know we know each other from college, but I know that you work in government affairs and that you work for Food Solutions Actions. But please go ahead, introduce yourself. Who are you? Why are you here?
Yeah, thank you. It's so good to see you. I know it has been forever, and what a treat to be able to chat about my industry tonight. So I do government affairs work for Food Solutions Action. We're a nonprofit 501c4 involved with policy and politicking work on behalf of the alternative protein industry.
So, what is alternative protein industry? Can you explain what that is?
Sure, I know it's like this crazy term that I think has just started to kind of spring up in the last few years, and I don't know if it's here to stay because there's still like internally a lot of discussion around whether or not it's the best word to use, but and you can think of it like this the same way like vegan has kind of become a no word in marketing, and now we say plant-based. Alternative proteins is like kind of similar. So all in all, alternative proteins is a term that references an industry that's global. A lot of activity happening in the US, though. There's about 300 companies here in the US, and they're working on one, two, or all three of these different kinds of protein products. So plant-based is one of the big categories. So those are products being made with plants to mimic the kind of experience of a more traditional meat and dairy product. Those have been in our grocery stores for a long time. I think like even if you don't consider yourself a vegetarian or vegan or whatever, you probably enjoy an oat milk latte from time to time, right?
Actually, I am convinced that vegan restaurants are better than normal restaurants. It's gonna be totally not true, but because I just feel like they put more care into like what they're trying to give me. Because there's so many restrictions, you have to put thought into what you're making, right?
Totally. And you have to, like, if you can't use real animal fat, you have to get really thoughtful about how you're going to make food taste good.
True.
So they really, put some extra effort into it. So anyway, plant-based is like the big category right now, but these other two categories are coming online soon that are like really far out and really exciting and totally, I think, the future of food. So the second category that's represented in the alternative protein space is fermented proteins.
Like kombucha?
So yeah, it's like a similar process, but slightly different. So like, cheese and yogurt, those are all fermented dairy products. So it's a similar kind of technology. But these companies are figuring out how to use fungi fermentation to create like extremely nutritious, like protein dense whole food products. That they're then able to like turn into things that again mimic the experience of like a more traditional meat product. So it's similar to plant-based in a lot of ways, except it's like a more technical kind of process. And I learned this recently. Fungi are not plants; they're their own family. So they don't like to be lumped into this category of like plant-based products.
Gotcha. Are there more benefits to it having like it be, like come from fungi versus plant-based? Like is that why we're moving towards that?
Yeah. So fermented is really exciting because for a lot of reasons. So fermented products are really fast to produce. Like from beginning to end, it takes 22 hours to make a fungi fermented protein, which in the grand scheme of things is like I think as fast as you can make a protein.
Compared to how long it takes to raise a cow.
Right, or even with plant-based products, like there's so many steps from like turning soy into like an Impossible burger. You're just talking about probably weeks at least to process. So it's really fast. It's also really cheap. Right now, the companies that are figuring out how to make these products, they're the closest kind of like product you can compare fermented proteins to would be chicken. So these companies are figuring out how to make like fermented chicken products that are
McDonald's chicken nuggets.
What was that?
McDonald's chicken nuggets, but
yeah,
healthy.
exactly, but healthy, but really healthy. And so I've been to a company recently, and they pitched these products as being super healthy because they have more protein than pork, more iron than beef, more potassium than a banana, more fiber than oats. Like, it's really amazing. And on top of all of that, compared to what it takes to produce chicken, these products cost 10 cents to the dollar. And chicken's already crazy cheap to produce. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of possibilities with fermented. And again, one of the differences between plant-based, I would say, and like the naysayers of plant-based usually cite like, oh, it's so processed. You know, these products have to go through so many steps to be yummy or to like actually look how we expect them to look, that by the end of the day, like, you're not eating a healthy food when it's all said and done. And there's arguments like that favor that, and also
Which, to be fair, like, I love Impossible Burgers, but like, I'm not eating a burger to be healthy. Like, I think I'm expecting.
Right.
I understand that it's a process. It's just I would rather eat that versus a cow.
Exactly. So everyone has their own kind of reasons, and anyway, it's just nice because fermented doesn't really have to deal with that because it truly is like a really healthy product. Mm-hmm. And then the third category, which is
the third
like
one.
the really crazy stuff, is called cultivated meat or cell cultured meat. Lab grown. Like, there's a lot of...
I've definitely heard of lab grown meat.
Yeah.
It looks exactly like it. I mean, they're basically cloning chickens, right?
Exactly. So it is biologically identical to a traditional whatever meat product because they're harvesting the stem cells of an animal and then bringing that over to these big like bioreactor machines. If you've ever gone to a brewery and like looked in the back and saw those big vats, it looks exactly like that. So it's not anything like scary or crazy. It's just these big kind of like metal tubs. And they feed these cells very specific nutrients and vitamins, amino acids, and they're able to replicate the cells into the specific body part that we ultimately want to consume. So awesome. You can imagine, so cool. Like, that means you don't have to kill an animal to create animal products. Yeah. And if you don't have to kill an animal, you don't have to like really raise an animal. Which means you don't need the land, the water, like any of the resources, and you can do it anywhere. Like you could put facilities making cultivated meat in like New York City, you know, and like super urban areas because you don't need really any of the space to create it in. It's pretty cool.
So is this what you do for a job, right? Because yes. I'm convinced. I'm 100% convinced right now. I want to eat some lab-grown chicken nuggets right now.
I'll like send you pictures of the products. We get to do tastings pretty frequently and go to different companies. And yes, that
makes sense.
Products, I mean, they're not all great, to be honest. Like, a lot of them still have a little ways to go, but some companies are really figuring it out. And I just think it gives me so much hope in where we can take our food system. Yeah. We're still a ways away from being able to cultivate like a T-bone steak or a pork chop or something that has really unique structures like that. But I think one day with enough government support, which is why, I exist, we'll be able to get there.
So why is government support so important for this industry?
So that's the big question. Right now, the alternative protein industry has some of the biggest cash infusions from private investment, private capital of any industry, which is super exciting to see. So there's a lot of money that's been invested. I think it's like $11 billion over the last just a couple of years has been invested in alternative protein companies, but it's not like spread out evenly over the 300 companies that exist in the U.S. It's going just to certain kind of interests, certain companies, and that's great. But we're hoping to really level the playing field, and we just need every source of money that we can get because really this puzzle of the cultivated question, particularly like getting to the T-bone steak point, we're probably looking at like 30 to $50 billion more of capital that needs to be invested to really figure it out. And we're not the only country who's interested in this space. This is like literally, it's a global race right now. So there are a ton
It's a global problem. Like, we have limited food resources.
Well, you can imagine that a lot of countries are having to deal with the question of food security, and food security is so intimately linked with national security that any country right now who's finding themselves in an uncomfortable position in an international landscape is really considering any kind of like resilient food options that they can. So alternative proteins, and particularly cultivated meat, where you can grow your own food in shop using essentially no water, no land, no resources to do it, or very limited resources. Everyone has a reason to be investing in this space. So as far as government support goes, the U.S. trails internationally. We're really low on the totem pole in terms of like government support and government funding and just awareness. I mean, I've taken, honestly, like over 100 meetings with members of Congress, and we're usually the first touch point they've ever had with this industry. And then here, like, we have major adversaries like China, Saudi Arabia, who are like putting cultivated meat in their agricultural plans, who have like articulated clear support and planning for this industry. And so we're just trying to make sure that it's on our radar, so we can be first to win this race too.
So do you get a lot of input from farm landowners right now? Because, you know, at the end of the day, like, it's my understanding, right? But we are running out of space. Like, we're running out of, like, you know, like, water resources, like, aren't as common anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, this is, like, it is just like renewable energy, in my opinion. Like this is, like, the next step, because we're just running out of resources. We don't have anything. But then what does that look like from, you know, the people that are already working in what is the current industry?
Right. So that's the big kind of tug of war that we deal with every day, especially because we're a bipartisan organization. So our work, we're trying to be besties with everyone, including, even though this is like probably a more obvious, like, Democratic kind of industry, we don't have issues with like getting Dems on board. But we want Republicans all in on this too. And it's just a harder sell, you know, because most of the time, Republicans and conservative offices, they're representing farmers and industry that just kind of naturally feels threatened by alternative proteins moving into their markets. So the way that we explain it, and you touched on this too, is you have to understand our food system as not in the context of a zero-sum game. Because global population is skyrocketing, not in the U.S., but around the world, it's skyrocketing. And with that, global demand for meat is skyrocketing as well. And because we only have so much arable land, like, we're maxed out on what we can produce. And within 20 years, I think 25 years, by 2050, however many years we have before then, we're looking at a 70% increase in global meat demand, with no more land than what we have right now to be able to produce it. And this is why countries like Brazil are struggling so much with deforestation. They're trying to make more room for cows. Mm-hmm. A lot of the reasoning behind our rainforest being destroyed is to make more room for agriculture. So, you know, we think there has to be a better way, and it seems that alternative proteins help us to avoid that. Yeah.
I agree. I remember in one of my classes in college, they were like, here, like, everyone try this cricket powder, because that kind of is the future, because we're not going to have sources of protein anymore.
Wait,
or at least not enough.
When was that?
This was in college. It was like environmental class. I loved, but yeah, they made everyone try cricket powder. So they're like, this is the future. And I agree, but luckily there's people like you that are helping develop alternative foods, and I would much rather eat a fungi chicken nugget than cricket powder.
Okay, so that's so funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of our work is having to, like, distance ourselves from insect protein, because that was not one of the 3 categories I mentioned.
No, it was not.
And but it's interesting. I don't know who lobbies on behalf of insect protein, but they are good, because I would say half of the meetings we go to with at least Democratic offices, they are like, oh yeah, alternative proteins like the cricket powder, right?
I mean, the thing
We're
is,
like,
like,
no.
they make it marketable. Like, forget about the people that are lobbying it. It's their marketing team. Their marketing team knows what they're doing. Because you have to be an excellent marketing team to market crickets
Right.
as something that you would want to eat.
Well, so I think that's part of our concern too, is like alternative proteins, especially fermented and especially cultivated, like it's already such a far out concept that we don't need anything else bogging us down. And so
Yeah.
to like be associated with like insects is just, it's too much. So yeah, we're definitely separate from that industry. Not to say there's not like a place and time for that. But I think one of the beauty of cultivated particularly is that it doesn't ask consumers to change their lifestyle or their habits. Yeah. It's like truly a win-win. Once we're able to get to the once we're able to get the products where we want them to be, I know it's going to be, it's going to take time for people to come around to consuming those types of products. I totally get that. But I think once we get to a good place where people understand them to be safe and delicious, there's cost parity. I mean, it'll be the same thing as what people are enjoying right now. So
well, something it'll be cheaper too.
Right. I mean, that's the hope, and that way people don't have to settle for crickets.
Yeah. Okay, no, that was all such good information. But now, okay, so tell me a bit more about you. So what is your background and how did you end up at this job?
Oh, yeah. So I went to Purdue University, as you know. Yeah, and when I was there, I had this wonderful internship at the Indianapolis State House. So I left for a semester and was a full-time staffer at the State House. And it's a part-time legislative body, so they're not in the full year. So it was just a semester long. I was there for the full session. And it's really, it was an awesome experience because they're fairly short staffed. So I was working for 3 different members. So I got a really good taste of a lot of different attitudes, like personalities, approaches, and I just fell in love with it.
That is the most positive way I've ever heard anyone say I was overworked.
It really didn't feel that way, but it was so funny to me because, I also realized that, I'm fairly liberal, and so I was like, this is an interesting experience to love working here so much when it's such a conservative body, and like it just felt like it didn't matter if we were there or not, like the same outcomes would have happened. Because it's like a super majority of Republican members. So I thought to myself, if I loved working in this state house so much, I'm sure I would love working for the California legislature where I'm from.
Yeah.
So I went on to work for the California Senate once I moved back home to Los Angeles, and was with the most wonderful senator who represented my hometown. So it was like very, very full circle, and I got to work on a lot of really awesome issues. And he had asserted himself pretty early on as like the environmental member of the legislature. So between the Senate and the Assembly, he was like the green guy. And so it was really a fantastic experience working for him. But something I've always been passionate about has been food, and the intersection of food and politics. And I majored in poli-sci at Purdue, but I had a minor in agricultural economics. Like I've always wanted to do something like specific to food. And I just, after like literally years and years of typing like food policy jobs, finally the perfect job popped up, and that's where I am today. But another kind of motivation for moving over into the field I'm in now is even working for the best like environmentalist in the California legislature, which is like the bluest legislature you can imagine. Agriculture is not mentioned in the climate conversation. It's just like totally skipped over. It's not thought about. I don't get it.
I mean, me neither. I know it's a huge part. I was telling you earlier. I switched to not eating any more red meat like 6 years ago, because when we got out of the Paris Agreement, I freaked out.
Right.
And I was like, I got to do something. And the first thing that I thought of was, all right, I got to stop eating red meat, because that was the best thing that I thought I could make as an individual contribution.
And you made an amazing choice. It really does. I mean, like, if everyone just cut out some red meat out of their diet, it would make a huge, huge impact. And again, the hope is, like, to ultimately not have to ask people to do that, because that's kind of like a pipe dream. But yeah, so I was just so overwhelmed to find really the opportunity that I had been searching for so many years, and I really don't think existed until like the last year. So the organization I work for, it's basically a startup. It's only about a year and a half old, and I've been working here for half a year, so only a year old before I came on. And it was just the perfect combination of policy, of food, of environment, of like vegetarian veganism. I've been like some sort of vegetarian, vegan, pescatarian for a little more than 10 years. So that's always been top of mind, but I've never come at it from like the PETA perspective. And so something that stood out to me about this group was it was just like, admittedly, the people who work for my organization, like most of them come at it from the animal rights perspective, but it's not like the driving, like it's not the driver of the work.
It's more of a personal choice, and then the work is more environmental based.
Right, exactly. And even like and even not sometimes, because when we're talking to Republican offices, we're not talking about the environment. We're talking about national security, American competitiveness, jobs, like, you know,
You gotta switch the message,
right? And we're just like so far removed from like save the animals, you know, like that's not, we have to stuff that like really, really
well,
deep.
the environment shouldn't be a partisan issue. Like it shouldn't be a political issue, really. It's
Totally.
a genuinely like for me, it's a logical issue. But to be fair, like I work in sustainability, and so do you. So maybe for us, it's more logical. But I mean, that's hopefully the point of having these conversations is that for us to talk, like, it isn't about how we feel or what we're morally inclined to do. It's literally what makes sense.
Right. Yeah, and I think to give Republicans credit, I think more and more like members are involved with environmental work in some capacity, but it's just not like it's not a part of their platform. So
Which I think it should be. I think it would help a lot of people too.
Well, what's interesting is you look at members who like represent a lake, like a huge lake, or have coastal like regions represented in their district, and those members they're more inclined to be part of more like greater environmental efforts because it's relevant to their district.
Yeah, it affects their people.
Right.
That makes sense. And I guess it's your job too to show that this issue affects everyone and it affects their people as well. So
yeah,
keep fighting the good fight.
Amen.
So what about your group? I know you said it was a startup. You talked a bit about what the mission statement is. The people that you work with, do they have similar backgrounds as you, or how did they end up at the company?
Yeah, so we have it's a super small team. So we have our president at the top, and then we have 3 vice presidents. One is more kind of like operations focused, and he has an animal rightsy background.
Okay.
Our president is a philanthropist and entrepreneur, so he actually has a real estate background and animal rights background.
I love that.
Yeah, and then we have like a federal team and a state team. So all policy and politics. So our federal team is 3 people, 2 vice presidents. So one of the VPs has experience working for Democratic offices, members of Congress, and then also like I think he worked for PETA for a bit. A lot of like
animal rights,
and like Dem political work. And then our other VP is a Republican and brings really amazing Senate ag experience. So we work for the Senate Agricultural Committee. So it's an amazing balance between those two, and then I'm just kind of like the support to these like huge names and big players in the space. So I'm just like I'm in awe of the conversations I get to be a part of, in the rooms I get to, like the digital rooms I get to be in with them. So And then on the state side, we have just one person doing all of our state work. It's unbelievable to see. She's working in about 10 different states, California being the main one. But some of our states that are like involved with alternative protein, either funding or procurement or could be something else. California and Massachusetts are the big ones. And then Michigan, Illinois, North Carolina is actually like really busy with alternative protein stuff. Hawaii is really into it. Minnesota is kind of coming online. So it's cool to see what states are.
How it's growing.
Right, are interested. And then we have one other colleague of mine. She's like HR right now until we're hiring right now for an HR position. But her main focus is corporate partnerships. So one of the most powerful tools that we have at our disposal when we're meeting with members of Congress is to like take them on a tour of an amazing facility doing really cool work. Have them do a tasting, like really see these products as something that is real, is yummy, is like not scary,
Yeah.
So anyway, she works on maintaining like those partnerships because it's a lot to ask a company to do like tours constantly of members of Congress who need to be treated very well and have like a very impressive experience. So she has her plate full doing that, and that's our team.
I love that. I think it's so important to debunk that myth that it's gross, scary, expensive. I mean, I guess right now it's a little expensive, but it's gonna get like when it's available to the public, it won't be expensive. That's the whole point.
Exactly.
So would you say then, like, people that want to work in the food sustainability industry, they don't necessarily have to have your same background, right? Like you mentioned, there's real estate, there's PETA, a lot of animal activists, there's poli-sci, there's HR. Like it sounds like too.
For sure. I mean, so 300 companies that's a pretty good number of companies across the country. So 38 different states right now that have alternative protein companies. Some are like huge names, like Impossible, Beyond. If you've seen like just egg or just mayo in stores, so they have a broader company called Eat Just, and they're doing insane things with doing like cultivated meat and plant-based, and so there's hundreds of jobs between all these companies that are available, and every organization needs a little bit different of expertise. A lot of the cultivated companies are looking for like hardcore scientists and researchers. Others are looking for like PR. Everyone needs HR. Comms is a huge one too. So really, I think there's a place for anyone who's interested and passionate for whatever reason.
That's really good to hear. Hopefully it'll get more people inspired to join that fight.
Oh yeah, I mean that was one of the selling points with when Mike was my immediate boss. When he was interviewing me, he was like, you won't believe like the job opportunities after you're done, you feel complete with your journey with FSA. Like the whole alternative protein world is just ripe with opportunity and with growth and upward mobility, and I totally believe it. It's really exciting to think about.
I mean, that's the cool thing about the sustainable industry. Like, the downside is there isn't a clear path, and we're trying to figure out how to do whatever we can to get into it, but it's not very clear. But the upside is that it's only growing from here. Like,
right.
That is awesome.
Fun fact, I actually was applying for a different job with a different alternative protein organization and didn't get that one. And Mike used to work for that one, and then like a few weeks later went off to work for where I work now and hired me for their organization. So you never know. You never know. Crazy. Just getting an interview is an amazing like foot in the door to get a feel for a company, get a feel for how all of this works. So just because one door closes doesn't mean there's not another one waiting to open. You really never know.
Talk about failing upward. You went
right
straight up. That's awesome.
And I'm so it worked out so well this way. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's really good to hear. Okay, so one thing that I try to do with everyone that I interview is I separate salaries based off of ranges,
okay.
and I categorize them based on who I'm speaking to. And then you can tell me if you're comfortable with what range you fall in.
Sure.
Okay. Cool. So we're going to do 40K or below a year. We're going to call it the corn-fed meat. And by the way, this could be totally wrong. I'm going off of like what I learned
that's
in
hilarious.
college.
Okay, love it.
So that's the corn-fed meat category, okay? From 40 to 60K a year, I'm going to call it the grass-fed meat.
Okay.
You know, that's a little bit of an upgrade, all right? It's better for the environment, it's better for your health as well. Then from 60 to 90, I'm going to call it the beyond meat. And then 90 plus a year, 90 plus K a year.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to call it the lab-grown meat. So
I love it. You did so good with that.
Thank you so much.
I'm in the beyond meat category.
Nice. All right.
Yes.
So from that 60 to 90K a year. See, I don't know why people sometimes think that you can't make enough money in the sustainable industry, but that's a lie. And again, like, you're young. Like, it's only going up from here. So
I really think alternative protein companies pay really well. I think I'm actually on the lower end of the pay scale with my job because most people in who work for our organization are like mid-career. And so they're like lab grown, like delight, like, surprise. They're really doing great. But then even the company that I was originally going for, within a few months of me applying, they upped all of their pay ranges by like 25 to 30,000.
wow.
So
That's
I
awesome.
know that the companies are trying to really retain talent in this space, and they're competing. It's a small world within this world, so it's kind of a competition, like who can keep who. So I think the money bit is pretty good in this space.
Nice. I think that's important for retention for sure. So I'm glad that they're doing that to retain that good talent. And then, so my last question that I usually ask everyone as well is, do you have any advice for people that might be thinking of switching, either working in another industry and switching to the alternative meats industry, or if they're in high school or in college and they're trying to decide what steps they want to take to get there?
The thing that comes to mind is, like, I don't want to sound cliche, so I'm going to try to sound interesting.
No, it's fine at this point.
I guess for me, like, when I got this job, everyone's first reaction was, "Oh my gosh, Lily, like, you did it. You've been talking about doing something like this forever. I'm so happy that it finally manifested for you." And to me, it was such an amazing affirmation of like, if you just really keep clear in your mind what you're passionate about and what you see yourself doing, it doesn't have to be super specific, but even just like boiling it down to like, what issues do you want to combine together? Like literally 5 years ago, this job didn't exist. Like this organization didn't exist. 2 years ago, it didn't exist. So it literally had to like be birthed into existence for me to find it. So I guess that's like a less cliche way of saying like, don't give up, like don't lose hope. Just really keep clear in your mind and your heart, like what you really see yourself doing. And keep fighting for it, keep searching for it until you're doing it.
All right. Thank you so much. That is great advice. I would have loved that when I was trying to figure my stuff out, because you're right. Like it's growing like crazy, and 2 years ago it could have not even existed. So I love that.
Right. Anything is possible. Yeah.
Anything is possible if you just believe. That is a cliche. That is a cliche. Not what you said before. That is a cliche. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. Thank you for those questions. That was so interesting for me, and I think you have a knack for interviewing and podcasting.
Oh my God.
I
hope other people think that as well. We'll see.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Awesome.